Members and guests, please rise as we are led in prayer by our chaplain to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our thought for today is from Genesis 5:1. In the day when God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. Let us pray. Almighty God, you have made us in your own image. Enable us to remember those that, and for those that we are sent here to provide the service for the people of this state. Keep these representatives and staff steadfast and faithful to you, that they may be able to do the good work for the people of South Carolina. Bless those who lead us in our nation and state, our president, governor, speaker, staff, and those who advise them. Protect our first responders and those who defend us at home and abroad. Heal the wounds, those seen and those hidden, of our men and women who suffer and sacrifice for our freedom. Lord, in your mercy, hear us, our prayers. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Members, we're in the roll call. Please record your presence. Please record your presence. We're in the roll call. Members, please record your presence. We're in the roll call. Members, please record your presence. Members, please record your presence. We're about to close roll call. Members, please record your presence. All right, members, we're closing roll call. Please record your presence. All right, polls are closed and clerk will tabulate. We have 85 members present. We're in the morning hour. Clerk will read.
House resolution by Representative Burns to recognize and honor Dr. Gene Fant Jr.
Representative Burns requests a roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
House resolution by Speaker Smith to congratulate Sumter County Clerk of Court.
Mr. Forrest moves that we add the roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
House resolution by Representative Hewitt to celebrate the occasion of the 13th anniversary of the town of Allendale.
Representative Hewitt asks for the roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
House resolution by Representative Whitmire expressing profound sorrow.
Representative Whitmire asks for the roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
House resolution to congratulate Roland J. Gardner.
Representative Bradley moves we add the roll of the House. Hearing objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
House resolution by Representatives Kirby and Johnson expressing profound sorrow for the loss of Dr. Rose Wilder.
Representative Johnson requests to add the roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
House resolution, Representative McCabe recognize and honor Peelian Elementary School archery team.
Representative McCabe requests to add the roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Stand at ease for a second. Members, let's quiet down. We're getting ready to get some bills and some work here. All right, clerk will read.
House Resolution by Representative Taylor, congratulate the city of New Elleton.
Adopted.
House Resolution by Representative May and others expressing profound sorrow for the loss of Dorothy Jean Jones.
Mr. May, you want the roll of the House? Mr. May, you want the roll of the House on this? Okay. Mr. May requests a roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
House Resolution by Representative Tetters expressing profound sorrow for the loss of the Honorable McKinley Washington, Jr.
Representative, so ordered. You don't want the roll of the House? You do? Mr. Tedder asks for a roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay.
House bill introduced by Representative Wetmore and others, Reproductive Health Rights Act.
Referred to Judiciary. Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor. Mr. Pope. Mr. Pope.
Get some order, please. Mr. Smith, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request when we adjourn today, we adjourn in the memory of Bentham Walker Edmonds from Sumter.
Mr. Smith moves that when we adjourn today, we adjourn in memory of Bentham Walker Edmonds of Sumter, and it is so ordered. Ms. Smith?
All right, we're on the calendar and we're on special order. Clerk will read.
House Bill 5399, Representatives Lucas, Smith, and others.
All right, this is third reading of House Bill 5399. Ms. Bernstein requests to be heard. Speak on the bill or against the bill. Recognize Representative Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is a very, very sad day. It's a sad day for me as a woman. It's a sad day for my two daughters. And I think it's a sad day for women across this state. We are sending a bill to the Senate, which is a total ban on abortions with few exceptions. Over the last 10 years that I've served here in the legislature, we've continued to erode women's rights. Until we can place ourselves in someone else's situation, we cannot truly make the decisions which we are legislating today. We all know the saying that before you pass judgment on someone, you need to walk a mile in their shoes, preferably one in heels. I've always wondered, when we talk about pregnancy in this chamber, we're so flippant about it, like it's a simple thing. We don't discuss what a tremendous undertaking, both physically and mentally, for the women it really is. It's a beautiful thing. I don't want you to misinterpret that, but it's not an easy thing. Pregnancies last 3 trimesters, which is about 40 weeks. And common symptoms, these are symptoms that I bet every single woman in here who has delivered a child has experienced, or your wives, or your sisters. These are routine, common symptoms, and listen to them. Nausea, vomiting, swelling, varicose veins, backaches, hemorrhoids, heartburn, fatigue, constipation, mood swings, frequent urination, tender breast, bloating, cramping, changes in your complexion, in your skin, sleep loss, food aversions, nasal congestion, and even swollen feet. I mean, I believe that every woman in here has had most of these symptoms, if not all. And these are just the common ones. Pregnancy is hard, and delivery can even be harder and can be life-threatening. I had 2 very difficult, life-threatening deliveries. So when we discuss it as 9 months as quote-unquote inconvenience, or that once pregnant we should have no rights over our own bodies, it is at a minimum short-sighted, naive, and misinformed. And to be honest, really, it's insulting. As has been stated ad nauseum to deaf ears, these decisions should be decided between a woman and her doctor. A doctor has at least 12 years of educational and medical training in this area, and the doctor is in the best position to advise and counsel his or her patient. It's not the legislature. Since the Dobbs decision, when the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade and 50 years of precedent, the overwhelming number of women in this state have been energized and galvanized to fight a total abortion ban, even one with exceptions. We are debating something here today that is not what the majority of South Carolinians want. The limited exceptions for rape and incest, which were added to the bill, still do not offer protection that women so desperately need. While this law provides an exception for rape and incest, it requires that an abortion be provided to a victim. It requires that in the event that abortion is provided to that victim the assault be reported to law enforcement along with their name, contact information, ensuring the absolute destruction of a victim's privacy and self-determination in the wake of a violent assault. Victims and victims alone should be able to decide whether to report a rape to law enforcement, with all the collateral consequences that that entails, the additional trauma, disbelief, shaming, and brutal court cases. The exception as written does not provide anything close to an adequate response to survivors of rape and/or intimate partner violence. And guess what? The South Carolina House of Representatives is about to determine that a woman whose fetus may not be compatible with life has no choice to terminate her pregnancy at all. So what we're doing in this chamber is we're asking women to carry a baby only so they can bury that baby. The majority in this room have made this most personal decision for the women and families in this state. And as you know, we have limited data on the consequences and ramifications of the current law of the 6-week abortion ban bill, also referred to as many in this chamber as the fetal heartbeat bill, which provides similar exceptions to what we have passed here. And it's foolish to think that those consequences and ramifications that we're experiencing in just this 6-week period of time since the enactment or implementation of that law would not apply here. We tend to discuss and debate issues up here really in the abstract, but I wanted to present some real-life examples that were presented by medical experts. When I say medical experts, were presented by doctors who practice in this state, real-life examples. And these same experts testified at the Medical Affairs Committee in the Senate, but unfortunately, they were not able to testify before our ad hoc committee meeting. I think it's important that we, some in this chamber might know some of these examples if you serve on judiciary or the ad hoc, but a lot might not. This is from a physician here in this state. In this bill, we use terms like reasonable judgment, prudent, substantial physical impairment. Those are vague and don't carry straightforward medical interpretations. You are asking doctors, and this is from her or him, you are asking doctors to weigh incredibly complex medical information to determine the best treatment for the patient. And in many cases, they can't offer that treatment unless they place their own freedom and ability to practice at risk. Imagine yourself sitting across from your own doctor right now. Your doctor says, I have some bad news. Your condition is getting worse. It is possible that you could die from this condition over the next 9 months, but we can't be sure. So in this face of uncertainty, I cannot give you treatment. This next situation is a direct text from an OBGYN right here in South Carolina 1 week after the Dobbs decision. Her text states, we had an 18-year-old hemorrhage to death after an at-home abortion. Her family didn't know she was pregnant, found her passed out bleeding in the bathroom. Our OB team delivered a placenta with a severed umbilical cord while our team coded her. No one knows where the fetus is. When you hear that banning abortion doesn't stop abortion, it just stops safe abortion, this is what that means. She said she can't stop thinking about that 18-year-old whose life was lost and how she died alone in the bathroom of her home, scared and afraid. As a mother of an 18-year-old, this troubles me as well. This is a life lost because this girl, this 18-year-old, felt that we as a state valued the life of her fetus more than her. No matter who the girl's parents were or what they believed, I'm confident that if you go back in time and they could have their daughter back, Even if it meant obtaining an abortion for her, they would do it without hesitation. Another consequence, criminalizing physicians is dangerous for patients, and it will discourage doctors from practicing in this state. We already have a shortage of OBGYNs. There are numerous counties in this state without one practicing OBGYN. It also creates significant mistrust by women. Women are fearful to go to their doctor. They're fearful to discuss their menstrual history because it will be shared due to fear of tracking. And women are not seeking care out of fear. And that's not what we want here. I know every one of you, and I know we all have good intentions, and we come from different backgrounds. And that's kind of what I'm saying, is you got to put yourself in someone else's shoes. We're making these decisions when we're really not qualified to be making these decisions. We're succumbing to national influence and pressure, I feel. And I hope these examples that I've discussed show why this terrible bill is bad policy for South Carolina. It's not the best interest of families in this state. It's making criminals out of physicians, and it's not what the people in this state want. And as I said earlier, today is really, really a sad day for women of South Carolina. And I believe from the bottom of my heart, it's a sad day for our state and for our country as a whole. And I thank you for the time that you've allowed me to express my dissatisfaction with the bill.
All right. Ms. Morgan, you're recognized. Mr. Morgan, speak for the bill. Recognize Representative Morgan.
The other night, I was reading my children a storybook, a Dr. Seuss storybook. I bet a lot of you have done that over your lives. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they wanted to hear Horton Hears a Who, because it had an elephant on it. And we read that book, and I did all my voices that I like to do to keep their interest. And about halfway through, maybe not even halfway through, I was struck with the very obvious allegory that is in Horton Hears a Who. If you don't remember the story, there's a bunch of tiny people that live on this little flower thing. And nobody believes they're there or thinks about them or regards them. They're voiceless in a lot of ways. But one person hears them. And they're yelling, "We are here, we are here, we are here." And nobody really cares or notices except for one guy, one elephant. And he tries desperately to tell everybody, but nobody really cares or believes them. They mock him, they ignore it. They don't really regard the people. "We are here, we are here, we are here," they cry. And he does everything he can to protect those people. And you know, it's funny, the line, maybe one of the most famous lines in that book, a person's a person, no matter how small. Today, very, very small people, voiceless people, are being protected. And as I think about the noises, now that my children have those voices that we can hear, the giggles, the fighting, the outbursts in airplanes that we get to share with those around us, and in the grocery store, the laughing. In a couple months and years, because of this bill, there's going to be a lot more giggles, a lot more outbursts in your grocery stores. And those people that will now have a chance at life because of this bill, because of this hard decision for a lot of you, those people one day will probably be like some of the people that were in the gallery yesterday who were here because they were protected by a law. when they were voiceless, when they were oh so small, when some people didn't regard them, some people didn't really believe they were a person, but now they have the chance for life. A person's a person, no matter how small. Today is a great day in South Carolina, but our work is not finished. I hope you vote for this bill if you're on the line, if you're pro-life, if you're struggling with it, and even if you don't vote for this bill, our work is not finished here. As many on both sides of the aisle have made the point, we're going to have a lot of more kids in South Carolina. We better continue to protect those lives and care for the mothers and care for the families and make the right policy decisions that make them have a better, more productive, prosperous life. So let's continue to work together to protect the life and liberty of all South Carolinians, all people, no matter how small.
Representative Cobb Hunter wishes to speak on the bill. Recognize Representative Cobb Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members, I'm not intending to stand here very long, but thought it important that an additional voice be added to the one that you've already heard. And I've heard previous speakers talk about more giggles. You know who's not giggling? A rape victim who is being forced to bear a child. Mr. Speaker and members, let me just be real clear. Heard people talk about more kids, more children. What I'd like to remind you of is the economic impact to women who have children that they don't want to have, the economic impact which suggests that women who are forced to have children who are already living in poverty, what we're doing, quite frankly, is creating or continuing the cycle of poverty. I heard one of our colleagues say, we're not done yet. And what I would remind voters out there of is that it sounded eerily similar to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who said, there is more work to do. Clarence Thomas, who named every decision that the Supreme Court has made that he would like to revisit, other than Loving v. Virginia. And it may be just a coincidence, Mr. Hart, that Loving v. Virginia has to do with interracial marriage. I think it's interesting that Supreme Court Justice Thomas wants to revisit every decision the court has made in the last 50 years, which grants rights to Americans, but he doesn't want to revisit that one. Go figure, as they say. Mr. Speaker, I hope your conversation with your caucus about decorum and civility and all of that applies to whatever voices I just heard over in the corner. I'm sure that was just a momentary lapse. My message is not to anybody sitting in this chair, in these chairs, because the die is cast, the decision has been made. My message is to those people outside of this chamber who may be watching online, who may be outside in the balcony or up, you know what I'm trying to say. I hadn't intended to come up here and say anything because, again, I know that the decision has been made. But those of you who know me know that there was no way after yesterday, and I would encourage anybody else who wants to be heard to do so. But there's no way I could not take this podium and echo Representative Bernstein's comments. You're messing in things that you have absolutely no business messing in. And I, of course, could not resist the urge. Mr. Burns is not back there. But to talk about the hypocrisy of my colleagues in here, and some of you were not here when we had those conversations about mask mandates. Find it interesting, Mr. Jones, that the author of the mask mandate and telling people what they can and cannot wear when it came to that somehow doesn't seem to apply when we talk about women being in control of their bodies. I said to the group yesterday, row, row, row your vote. I repeat that for those who are interested. Now, I'm not stuck on stupid. I understand all the maneuvering, and let me pause just for a moment to say thank you to my Democratic colleagues for their work yesterday. What I am hopeful, Mr. Gilliard, it shows is what can happen when you have a plan, you execute that plan, you let go of whose idea it was and who's going to get credit and all of that. But you recognize the power of collective action. And yes, there are always going to be one or two who will go a different direction. But guess what, y'all? That's why we're Democrats, because we allow that. We allow you to make up your own mind. We allow you to take positions that your caucus may not like. We allow you to be the independent voice that your constituents sent you up here to be. My message to my Democratic colleagues, if I am reelected, because I do have opposition as well, and I take it very seriously because you know there are a lot of uninformed, or shall we say misinformed voters in this state. And so I'm not taking it for granted. I think all we need to do is look around at some of the empty seats in this chamber. All we need to do is look around at some of the seats that are not empty, but will be empty by that person to understand that on any given election day, whether fairly or not, people can lose. I want you to know that for me, it's okay if I lose, because guess what? The sun will come up the next morning, whether I'm in here or not. And I think if some of us had that attitude, that life goes on. I don't know, maybe some of y'all didn't have a life before you got in here. I did. I got one now, and I'm interesting, you know, I like this and all of that, but I'll be all right if I don't come back. And some of y'all say, Lord, please don't let her come back, please. But in all seriousness, I am so hopeful that the voters will tell you what they think of what you're doing on November 8th and in the 2 weeks before that. Interestingly enough, for a group of people who always talk about what the voters of South Carolina want, Representative Crystal Matthews came up here yesterday and offered up an amendment which would have allowed the voters of South Carolina to speak on this issue. I find it very interesting that some of us in here apparently don't want to know what the voters really think. Could it be that we are so intent on our version of what the voters think You know, it's kind of like nowadays, don't confuse me with facts. There are so many people, it is so interesting to me how misinformation, knowledge, how ignorance and lack of knowledge is ruling the day. How do we think we will continue to maintain what we think is American excellence when we are not interested in science or education, history, or anything like that? And so I say to the voters of this state, when they talk to you about what the voters want, how about asking them how they voted on this amendment that Representative Matthews put up that would have allowed them to speak? I just am so curious as to how we want voters to vote about whether the flag should stay up or come down. We want voters to vote about whether we should have open or closed primaries. Did Kansas scare y'all that much? I'm thinking maybe so. And for those of you who only watch Fox News and QAnon and all of that, what I'm talking about when I say, did Kansas scare y'all that much, is that in Kansas, ruby red Kansas, the voters in Kansas decided, yes, we believe in God. Yes, we believe in the flag. We believe in America and all of that. But guess what else we believe in? We believe that women have the right to make choices about their reproductive freedom. The voters, conservative voters in Kansas, said that. And I'm not sure if maybe we are afraid that all of these years of us coming here, standing at this podium, talking about what the people of South Carolina want, I think some of us scared to really find out, Mr. Clyburn, what the people of South Carolina want. And so with all due respect to my 123 other colleagues in here, to the voters of South Carolina, if you want to see a different reaction on the issue of choice, you're going to have to change the faces of the men and women who sit in here and across the hall. Now, guess what people are thinking? How dare she get up there and tell people to vote against me? Y'all, these seats don't belong to us. They belong to the people. And they have a right to change at any point they want to. And guess what else? At the time, Mr. Simrall, about 38,000 voters in House District then 66 say, you know what? I don't always agree with that lady. Sometimes she talk too much. Sometimes she be stepping on toes. Sometimes she just be making me mad. But you know what? I think I'll send her back, because one of the things that she does do is listen to her constituents. One of the things that she does do is, when she has additional information, recognize that it's okay to change your mind. You don't have to get locked in. I've often wondered why politicians are so afraid of admitting that they change their mind on an issue. Anytime, it's about learning, y'all. I'm a believer in lifelong learning. And anytime you get new information or you see a different perspective, wouldn't the right thing to do be to change your mind? I don't know, maybe it's just me. But I appreciate your attention. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. You know, the other thing that scared me about we're not done yet is I've been here 31 years, and I declare, I thought everything, Mr. Newton, that could be done on the issue of abortion had been done. But y'all keep surprising me. and amazing me with all of the restrictions that you come up with. And I really, really want to impress upon you, especially, particularly, those of you from urban areas, y'all remember this. There aren't OB-GYNs in South Carolina, in rural South Carolina. So when you're having these women carry a baby to term, who's going to take care of it? Oh, all of the pro-life people take great pride in the fact, Mr. Herb Kirschman, that we have given millions to pregnancy crisis centers or whatever the name is. I'm so glad that those programs are there to provide diapers and formula and some of the things that babies need. But you know what else I wish was there? That kind of support when they get out of diapers. That kind of support, Mr. Hyatt, when they start school. That kind of support when the mom who has been forced to have them has no job, no income, not knowing where the next meal is going to come from. I wish we had that kind of passion that I've seen up here for the unborn. I wish that extended to those who you're forcing to come into this world. I'd like you, Reverend Rivers, to have that passion for a safety net and a support net so that these kids who are here, not because they wanted to come, but because some politician forced them to come, it would be great if in the state of South Carolina, for example, we funded public, emphasis on public education in a way that these kids wouldn't grow up continuing the cycle of poverty. It'd be great if our support system was such that children didn't have to worry about where the next meal comes from. So y'all take the victory lap on this, as you've taken the victory lap on funding religious private schools. But you know, I'm kind of with those who say, you know what? If y'all ain't gonna recognize, and when I say y'all, I'm not just talking about us, I'm talking nationally now, guys. If y'all aren't gonna recognize, you're always talking about the Constitution, the Constitution. I think the Constitution somewhere talks about separation of church and state. But since y'all don't want to recognize, now, I'm not a lawyer, not a constitutional scholar. I don't even play one on TV anymore. It's too many of them. But here's the point. No offense to the lawyers in the room. But if you are of the opinion, I won't go down that road. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for this. I think, like my grandmama say, I'm beginning to kind of tear the rag off the bush. Some of y'all know what that means and some of you don't. But I appreciate the opportunity to come and stand before you. Voters out there, I like all of these people in here, don't have a thing against them. Listen, this is not personal. This is business. And too many of you have made your choice at the polls personal. You have voted for people because you go to church with them. You like them and they're nice people. You golf with them, you play bridge, you do all of those kinds of social interactions. What I want you to start asking voters is the question that was asked by one who probably would be considered a rhino now with this current crowd, and that's the former President Ronald Reagan. The question that he asked, are you better off now than you were before? And so I say to the women in this state especially, and to the men who support women having the intelligence to make responsible choices about what they do with their body, I say to them, the question you need to start asking your church members who are in here, your friends who are in here, is how they have voted, and if they're running, how they will vote on issues that affect your well-being. And at some point in this country, when we have voters who stop falling for the red meat that is way before them, the distractions that keep you off of what is really going on, then you will make better choices at the polling booth. And for those of you who are harboring what you're going to do to me in the event that I do get elected and come back, bring your A game. Because guess what? There have been many who have come before you and have sat right in some of these same seats, right, Mr. Valentine? And had all kinds of plans about what they were going to do to Cobb Hunter. I won't tell you where some of those people are now, but it don't matter to me. Like I said, this is not my life. I had a life before I came here. I'm going to have one when I leave. Thank you so much for your attention and your patience. And voters, row, row, row your vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb Hunter.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Bamberg. Mr. Bamberg's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues, Representative Beth Bernstein and Representative Cobb Hunter. And I disagree with one point raised by Representative Cobb Hunter, that this is not personal. It is personal. It's business, but it's very personal for millions of South Carolinians. I don't plan on being up here long. I mean, we know what the deal is, but there are a couple of things that I do think have to be mentioned prior to the final vote being cast, because even though we know that third reading is a defunctory part of the process, up until third reading, you still have a choice. You still have a choice to vote against the bill and vote the bill down. In looking at the amended piece of legislation, first from the legal standpoint, you know, it notes that all human beings are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Then why does South Carolina not have a hate crimes law? Why do we not have a hate crimes law if the South Carolina General Assembly truly believes those words, that all humans are created equal? If South Carolina truly believes in those words, then why has this state not expanded Medicaid so that all the people who can't afford private health insurance and are losing limbs, for example, because of diabetes, and are dying young because of chronic hypertension, why can they not get health insurance coverage in this state? If South Carolina truly believes in those words. If we truly believe in those words, then why is there still such a large disparity across this state in the quality of lives for people living in really urban, really affluent, really wealthy areas like downtown Greenville to the people living in Allendale County, Representative Hosey, Bamberg County, Hampton County, rural Colleton County? If South Carolina truly believes these words that sound great on paper, then why are there so many South Carolinians struggling every day while others are living just fine because of decisions that are made up here in Columbia. It goes on to talk about Section 3, Article 1 of the state constitution that guarantees no person will be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, or be denied the equal protection of the laws. And that language from our state constitution is used to sound good and back proponents of this legislation. Then why is it that every single day in South Carolina, somewhere, some citizen is having their civil rights violated? Why is it, if South Carolina truly believes those words and believes those words in our state constitution, why is it that it's so difficult, for example, and I love law enforcement, why is it so difficult for an officer in this state who tramples all over Section 3, Article 1 of our state constitution, why is it so difficult for prosecutors to make a decision whether to indict them when they violate citizens' civil rights? Why is it that citizens' civil rights are getting violated every single day if we really, as a General Assembly, believe those words? Time and time again, in this state, in the General Assembly, in order to garner support for bad legislation, we use words that sound good. We use words that sound great in theory, and if those words are truly appreciated and if we truly believed in them, a lot of the problems that the people in our state face wouldn't exist anymore. But do we truly believe in those words? I bring to the body's attention, in the Republican Party's haste to figure out a solution and pass abortion legislation to look a certain way in this country, one of the unanticipated consequences of the language that's in this bill, because I read the language, it's not politics, this is the law. And if you look at a section that was added, and I'll give it to you for those of you who would like to read it, Section 4441-900A. This was put into this bill. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, a biological father of a child has a duty to pay the mother of the child the following financial obligations, beginning with the date of conception. And in your party's haste to pass bad legislation, you forgot to include language that excluded people who were married. So guess what? To every married man in here, if your wife gets pregnant, to the citizens watching, ladies, if your husband gets you pregnant under this bill, you have the ability to put your husband on child support immediately, and there's nothing he can do about it. The story, happy wife, happy life. Ladies, if your husband isn't making you happy, hit him with child support, because you don't have to be divorced. You don't have to be separated. You don't have to be unmarried. This is the problem with rushing to make law so you look a certain way to the general public, because the written law has consequences. And you don't have to be a lawyer to understand words on paper. Oh, man. Every single husband who gets his wife pregnant in this state is responsible for 50% of the mother's pregnancy expenses. In your haste to look good for a national agenda, we wrote, yet again, bad law with unintended legal consequences. But that's what happens. I just think it's hilarious. I honestly think it's hilarious. But that's what happens when bad law is written in a haste to look good. One of the biggest problems that I have with this legislation, and there's this misconception that people like myself and others, no one's pro-abortion. Not pro-abortion. You have the pro-life crowd, and that's a label used. You have people who are just mind your business. I'm of the opinion, and many people in this state are of the opinion, that people need to get out of other people's homes, they need to get out of other people's doctor's offices, and they need to just mind their own business. Let people make decisions that are best for themselves and their families. And we constantly want to get into people's homes. Amendment was put up yesterday saying let the people of South Carolina vote on this issue. And it failed on a very crafty and intellectual. Shout out to Representative McCravy. I believe he raised that issue. Legal minds at work. And it failed. But everything else in this state, alcohol, gaming, right? All these other things can be put to a public vote. But on an issue where even any Republican, any Democrat, any citizen who read polling numbers, polls that were conducted by people who were proponents of an abortion ban, the numbers indicate clearly that majority of the state of South Carolina does not support this. So of course no one wants it to go to a public vote, because then that means we wouldn't be here. We talk about the process. And I attended a portion of the first ad hoc committee meeting on this. I don't like rush legislation, particularly when it has real life implications for people in this state. And it was sad. As I'm walking in the building, I see hundreds of women from the state of South Carolina standing outside. And for those of you who may not have been here, it was extremely hot. There were no tents for shade. There was no state giving out cold water to its citizens as they wait in line in 100-degree weather to testify before the committee. And while these women, young, old, including women with canes and walkers, while they were standing outside in the hot, blazing sun, committee testimony started. And the very first person to testify wasn't even from South Carolina. Wasn't a doctor. Wasn't even from South Carolina. It was one of these national advocates. And it was said that it was a special invited guest. It was not, the public needs to understand, it's not a special invited guest of the House. Wasn't a special invited guest of me or the Democratic Party. It was a special invited guest of majority of the chamber. That is who the state heard from first, instead of the women who pay taxes here, the women who live in this state, the women who are impacted by this legislation in this state. And the state chose to hear testimony first from someone from another part of the country, which spills over to the next issue. Instead of listening to the people of South Carolina, why has the body been listening to a National Right to Life group? It's not even from here. There's a Politico article. when we talk about who should we listen to, we have choices. As state representatives, as senators, we have choices. And the choice should always be to first listen to the people of South Carolina. And the Democratic Party, we have tried to do that. We have tried to listen to the people of South Carolina. We have advocated the positions raised by the people of South Carolina. But instead, and I want to read this quote. This is from a National Right to Life official. This was the quote. Quote, "She would have had the baby, and as many women who have had babies as a result of rape, we would hope that she would understand the reason and ultimately the benefit of having the child." And this National Right to Life official wasn't talking about a grown woman. This National Right to Life official was talking about a 10-year-old girl in Ohio who had been raped by a 27-year-old man who got charged with rape. And I don't bring this up in particular to talk about the comment itself. I bring it up to pose the question, why would anybody in this body choose to listen to someone who thinks, with regards to a 10-year-old child, we would hope that a 10-year-old rape victim would understand the reason and ultimately the benefit of having the child? Why would this state listen to that person and ignore the majority of the citizens in South Carolina? This is the problem with outside national influence dictating what we do as House members, what the General Assembly does as the legislative branch of government in this state. Is we follow up, we push legislation drafted by people who think that a 10-year-old should be able to understand the reason why she's pregnant because she got raped. We listen to them and don't even listen to our own citizens. We have an ad hoc committee meeting with hundreds of South Carolina women standing outside, and the first person we listen to as a special invited guest is somebody with this same group. If you're out here in South Carolina, you should be offended as a citizen of this state, not because of the decisions that were made, but because your voice took a back seat to a national group, even if it meant you had to stand outside in the 100-degree heat. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. This is a 29-page memorandum of law drafted by the BOP law firm. The BOP law firm, I believe, operates as general counsel for the National Right to Life group. And as America was waiting for the Supreme Court to rule and potentially overturn Roe v. Wade, the BOP law firm, as general counsel for this National Right to Life group, prepared model legislation. It was said at some point that the bill that we're dealing with was handcrafted specific for the state of South Carolina. That's not true. That's not true. The very first person who testified at the ad hoc committee meeting, this special invited guest, while hundreds of South Carolinians stood outside in the heat, I believe works for this law firm. And this legislation was sent all across America to Republican caucuses to force abortion legislation down the citizens' throats in their state. This is who we're listening to instead of our own citizens? I don't agree with that. This impacts South Carolina families, women, children, men, doctors, communities. You heard earlier that most of the counties in this state don't have an OBGYN. You tell me how people in Bamberg County, Allendale County, Hampton County, Colleton County, rural Orangeburg County, how are these young women, middle-aged women, older women, How are they supposed to get to doctors in time and get certain treatment? We don't even have Uber. There's not a single taxi in Bamberg County or Allendale County, Representative Hosey, or Barnwell County, or Orangeburg County, or Colleton County. We don't have public transportation. There's not a single transportation metro bus system in Bamberg County or Allendale County or Colleton County or Barnwell County. Representative Williams, Uber in Hampton County? No. These are counties that lead the state in poverty because of the failures, unfortunately, of this great General Assembly for years. Pigeonholed economies. How are these women supposed to get to their doctor in time to deal with all of the restrictions that we keep putting in place? How? Someone please answer that question. So yes, this is personal. This is not just business. This is personal for a lot of people. I'm supposed to tell a 19-year-old girl in Bamberg, you either got to find a ride or walk to Columbia? This is reality for half of the people in this state, and I wish that the South Carolina House and the South Carolina Senate would consider these things before they go and pass rush legislation that puts even husbands on child support. What are we supposed to do? From 2012 until I believe 2018, Bamberg County had no emergency medical care. There was no hospital. There was no emergency room. In 2016, Barnwell County lost their hospital. There was no emergency medical care. There was no ER. What are we supposed to do? What am I supposed to go home and tell my constituents? And yeah, I understand pro-life, I understand people's religious beliefs, but what are folks like myself and Representative Hosey and others, Representative Williams, what are we supposed to tell our constituents to give them answers on how they can get medical care that they need, how they can even get to an OBGYN? What are we supposed to tell them? And we stand up here time and time again and we beg and we plead for the Tier 4 counties in this state. And for those who don't know, that's the ranking system on whether or not a county is economically distressed. What are we supposed to tell the people in these Tier 4 counties that lack these basic needs? These are the things that this body could be working on instead of listening to people who think that a 10-year-old rape victim should understand why it's okay and she should appreciate the fact she's going to have a baby. A 10-year-old is not capable of understanding that. I am sorry. They're not. You still have a choice. You still have the ability to vote against this. And after today, we have the ability to finally step up and work to fix some of the problems that have been pointed out. If we're going to force policies like this down people's throat, if that's what we're going to do, we should at least help them with the necessities. Somebody please help us in rural South Carolina figure out how we can get OBGYNs to the area. Please vote to include money in the budget so that these economically distressed areas that don't have tax bases to raise millions of dollars to build brand new buildings, please vote to apportion money to these areas so that we're not pigeonholing poor people in this state. And it's not a Democratic thing, it's not a Republican thing, it's not a black thing, it's not a white thing, it's an access thing. And when access is messed up, it's messed up for everybody. When you pass this, there are Republicans in certain part of this state who will be stuck just like everybody else. Because if you pull up an Uber app in rural South Carolina, it doesn't ask you the question, are you a Democrat or a Republican? And if you click Republican, it doesn't instantly populate Uber X's. You're still stuck. And this is real life. And hearts are going to be broken. Families crushed, communities destroyed because we want to rush legislation. We could have taken more time to vet this. We could have taken more time to vet the language. We could have taken the time necessary to ensure that in our haste, we didn't accidentally put every single married man on child support. And I bring that point up because we're lawmakers. I believe it was said yesterday during the debate, the importance of writing good law. This is not good law. It's not good law. Matter of fact, it doesn't even differentiate. If you got a kid right now, your wife can put you on child support. Good luck. Bruce Bannister, Representative Bannister, about to get a lot of business. What are we doing? What are we doing? I want the people of South Carolina to remember this. Don't fall for the glitz and the glam. This is real life. This is real life, and there are people in this body, there are people in this state who are fighting to make the best decisions for you, not the rush decisions for you, not the nationally politically motivated decisions for you. So thank you all for your time, and God bless you. God bless the state of South Carolina.
Mr. Jermaine Johnson is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. It's interesting that that we even have to do this here today. I spend a lot of time with all of my colleagues. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're on. I spend a lot of time with them, talking to them. Just trying to get some understanding on both sides here. And what we hear a lot of is that the Republicans, and they like less. I guess they like less government. Less decision makers in their business. We went up and we talked about the mask mandates, and we talked about medical freedom and vaccine freedoms and all these freedoms, but the buck stops at women. Can't do that. We can't allow women to make their decisions. We have to make sure that we stop it there. I'd be remiss if I didn't, bring up the hypocrisy of this chamber here. Just the hypocrisy is one thing that it speaks louder than even the words that we're speaking here today. We have individuals in here who complained and cried and talked about how the decisions we make in here hurt people and they hurt real live individuals. And then they go ahead and they vote again for the same type of things with more restrictions. We have individuals in here who said, you know what, we're not going to invoke cloture on y'all. We're going to let everybody be heard. We want everybody to be heard. We want that. And then cloture was invoked. We have individuals in here who say, I have a daughter, I have this, I have that, I have a family, I believe in this, that, and the third. And then they vote for something like this. We have individuals in here who talk about children and lives and giggles and all this other stuff that we've been talking about, but nobody in here is raising their hand to be a foster parent. So, what I'm saying is I will be the first person in line with you all when you all adopt two of these children that are coming into this world. Heck, I'll be a goddaddy. Call me up. I'll be a godfather to these kids that you are now going to be adopting in your families, all right? We have all these children that are here. We don't have enough doctors to deal with the children we have here right now. We don't have enough teachers to deal with the children we have here right now. We don't have enough schools to deal with the children we have here right now. We don't have enough transportation to deal with the kids we have here right now. We don't have enough parents to deal with the children we have here right now. We don't have enough resources
to deal with the children we have here right now. But yet we have people in here saying, let's bring them on. Bring them on. You know, again, bringing up the hypocrisy of what you all are saying. You say all lives matter. That's what y'all like to say, right? All lives matter. Not Black Lives Matter. No, that's a bad thing. That's a slur here. We can't say that. All lives matter. But let me ask you the question. When does life begin for you? Tell me, when does life begin? You got to say life begins at conception, right? That's what y'all are saying, right? You're nodding your heads. Life begins at conception. It's conception when the sperm meets that egg, life begins. Okay, so when life begins, you as a human being yourself, you have certain unalienable rights that you all have right now, right? That nobody can take away from you. So you mean to tell me this is what you all are going to support, right? When the sperm meets that egg, that now conceptualized human being now gets a social security number. This new egg and sperm now gets to be put on life insurance. This new person that y'all have said is a person now should be able to receive all of the benefits that you and I have. Is that correct? These are tax breaks for parents now, right? This is what you all are going to agree on, right? Oh, no. That's not a real person. Not at that time. So you tell me, when is a person a person? If this is a person, I am not an attorney. Like, Representative Cobb Hunter, I don't play one on TV. I'm not Justin Bamberg. I don't have a Rolls Royce. I don't have any of that good stuff. I don't have any of that good stuff there. However, if I were to be an attorney, and I'm going to talk to all of the women across South Carolina right now, if I were a pregnant woman in this state, as soon as I got pregnant, I would sue the state of South Carolina. Because this is a person that I'm carrying, based on what you were saying. And I would sue I would sue the General Assembly to say, you know what, this person that I'm carrying, I should be able to get some tax benefits for this person I'm carrying. I should be able to put this person on my life insurance. I should be able to put this person, I should be able to do this. Am I right? I should be able to do that. This ticket that I got for riding in the carpool lane shouldn't account. I have a person in me. This is a person. My SNAP benefits. This is a person. My discounts, my 2-for-1 special. This is a person, right? It's a person. So this being a person, I'm telling you what you all have just set us up for, a bunch of lawsuits. And all these attorneys in here are salivating at this opportunity right now because they're going to take all those cases. This is money we're talking about here because this is a person. And life begins at conception because this is what you all said. And because you did not define conception in your rushed bill, we don't even know when conception really is, so that is an easy argument point. So again, women of South Carolina, go ahead, get your favorite attorneys right now, get them lined up, call them, all the pregnant women here. I expect you all to be claiming these people on your life insurance, on your taxes, get your tax benefits, get every benefit that you are afforded to because you are carrying live people. Y'all have really messed up. Y'all have really messed up. So good luck on this one. I was blessed with 4 children, that I have now. So Representative Bamberg raised a great point, about being put on child support. Listen, I'm in love with my wife. My wife loves me. Baby, I love you if you're watching. I don't want to be put on child support. And, I'd assume that I'm not going to be put on child support. But however, man, you all in here, y'all better keep your wives happy. You better keep your wives happy because y'all going to be the first ones to go in there and she's going to say, baby, well, you voted on this bill. It's your fault. You set it up. You gave me the right to be able to do this because I'm carrying this person that you put in me. You put this person here. So you're going to have to wrestle with your own decisions because these are people now. These are people. People. I bet y'all didn't think about that. These are people. So when we start to put these amendments up and bills and things like that in the upcoming session, I fully expect that all of you all will support an amendment to this that says when conception happens, they should be afforded every single right that every one of us has, unless you're a hypocrite. So one or the other. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So again, congratulations to you all. We just, created a bunch more people that won't, and even some of these people won't even come to full term. Some of these people, there was a story about a lady who was pregnant with a headless baby and could not get an abortion because the person had a heartbeat without the top of her head, without the top of the baby's head, but was a person because it had a heartbeat. This baby was ultimately going to be born and not be sustainable, right? It was not a viable life. But she was going to have to pass this child. So this is a person under your definitions there. Life insurance on that person will now pay her out because this is a person. I want y'all to think about that. These are people. Understand that. So again, next session, we'll be putting up some amendments on this, and I know my colleagues in here are not hypocrites at all, and y'all will support that. So thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Representative McDaniel's next.
First, I just want to say good morning to all of my colleagues that are still in the chamber. We see that many individuals have chosen not to be here and listen to the voices of their colleagues. But we do know that when we put legislation up, that we may not think so, but we should have a responsibility to listen to the voices of the representatives that will come up and speak, because it impacts all of our constituents. And while some of us may want to just serve a small portion of our constituents, the legislation that we put up impacts all. Now, initially, I wasn't going to come up and talk, but I had a meeting in my office this morning with some citizens of the state of South Carolina dealing with mental illness. And it was 3 mothers and the dad of one of the individuals, and they were really concerned about where the state is with regards to mental health. One of the individuals, well, all 3 were killed as a result of, 2, and one was of incident with regards to law enforcement and mental health issues. And what came out of that meeting, as we're going to keep it ongoing to see if we can get some legislation to introduce, is the failure of us as a General Assembly in the state of South Carolina when it comes to addressing mental illness in the state. And after having that conversation and seeing how our mental health department is doing everything that they can with the lack of resources necessary to do everything they can, and also with the lack of staff, I found that we're debating abortion, and we just passed an abortion bill which states that women are limited and restricted as it relates to them making that decision. But then, I think when I was watching in subcommittee, a statement was made that we are trying to stop women from using abortion as a form of birth control. Now, I don't know about you all, but I don't know any individuals who decide to have sex. Before they have sex, they decide, oh, if I get pregnant, I'm going to have an abortion. Now, if I'm wrong, I need somebody to correct me, because I don't know any individuals that have that conversation. Abortion comes up as an option after the fact. And then I was talking yesterday to one of my colleagues in here, and I said, you know, having an abortion, not having an abortion, but do we realize that this bill that we're passing, if we force a woman who have been raped, and I mean an horrific rape, and we make her carry a baby for 9 months, every time she rubs her stomach when she's pregnant, every time that baby kicks, she's reminded of how she was raped and what all she went through. And I asked, how do we reconcile that with not allowing her to make that decision? I'm not sure that I am sure. I couldn't reconcile the comment, because the comment was, well, we don't want to kill the baby. Okay, I get that. None of us want to kill babies. But do we not realize that when we do not expand Medicaid, and when there are children that are suffering illnesses and they can't get the help they need because we have made that decision not to, we may have killed a child who would have lived if they were able to get the medical help that they could have received through expanded Medicaid. The firing squad, the electric chair, is that not killing? Is there a different definition for killing than what I know? So let me be clear that the position on abortion is about this woman having a choice and, quote, limited, but not so limited, government staying out of her business when it comes to her decision as to whether or not she should have an abortion. So if someone in here can help me reconcile that it's okay for us to force a woman but we can go ahead and use the firing squad, and we can use the electric chair, we can not deny people access to health care, and we can do all these other things that causes death. But a woman who may have mental issues because we have forced her to keep reliving and reliving and reliving and reliving how she became pregnant if it was against her will, and the mental illness that she may suffer after she had this child that could cause her to labor to later not just kill the child, but also herself. So I think I heard someone say, well, you know, one life, two lives. Well, if we caused the mental illness because we forced her to have a baby that she knew mentally she was not going to be able to live after she had this child, then I think we all stand accused. And we should all face charges just as we would want that doctor to face charges who would have relieved her from the mental stress and illness that's to come. And I heard people say, well, you know, I had my child and I'm so happy about it. But we're not talking about you. We're talking about these women who have suffered extreme situations. Or do we not care? But we say we do. And we go to church and we sit there and we say, oh, well, God doesn't make a mistake. But I guess he made a mistake when he told us that we can use the firing squad. When he told us it was okay not to offer insurance for people who cannot afford it. And you know the Bible does tell us that the poor shall be among us. And we're supposed to take care of them. And that's one of the charges that we have here as lawmakers. So why on earth is it that we still cannot be satisfied? We're coming back next year to continue the same fight when we got roads that are torn up. Oh yeah, and that's another thing. When we're driving on these raggedy roads and people having accidents and killing and dying. Okay, we need to go to court again. I think all of us need to be in jail. What y'all think? We are contributors. We are contributors. So, Mr. Sergeant at Arms, you can start arresting us after this meeting. Do we get pleasure in taunting? Because that's what we'll be doing to these women who we're going to make every time she rub your stomach. Think about it. And if you can't get pregnant, act like you could, because you won't never have that child if you're not a female. So I'm standing here basically for those of you who are listening, that we have an election in November, and we can come out here in the vestibule and we can shout and we can dance and we can celebrate. But until you have people in this chamber who share the same ideals that you share, and I understand there's millions of us who do not vote, then I guess y'all need to go to jail too, because y'all contributed. Because if you don't elect the right people here to make the right decision for all of the state of South Carolina, not just part of it, all of South Carolina. And we know rural South Carolina is suffering like it has never, ever. And I think they had some statistics on TV last night where only about 17% of the citizens of this state, this great state, are okay with us coming back in session and making sure that, or trying to make sure, that there are no exceptions when it comes to abortion. So is it okay that we only represent 17% of the people here? Is that okay? Those of you who still in here, your minds are not already made up. Is it really okay that we pass a law that only represents 17% of the state? And that might be why we don't want to do a referendum. Is that the reason we don't want to do a referendum, y'all? 17%. The way I learned math, that means that the voters would turn it down. So we want to make the decision in here, because we go home and we convince our people that we're doing a great job and they keep re-electing us. But I'm challenging all of you all who listening, and if your folk are not listening, you need to tell them. If they want to see impactful change and good things happen in this state, roads being fixed, good public education, good use of our dollars, good companies coming in, bad industry not going into the rural and the poor communities, everybody being treated equal, you not having to face God when you leave this earth and he says, I know you not, then you need to vote for the right people, so that good decisions can be made, so this state can be as great as many of the other great states in the United States. So, for those of you who are out there, because I can see a lot of these folk in here not listening and paying attention, but y'all voted for them. Y'all voted for them, and they're making these decisions that are not good for the United States, not good for the state of South Carolina. We talk about limited government. I'm still trying to figure out and still trying to reconcile limited government with us all in people's households telling them what they should do when they don't understand their mental state and don't care about it because they're not doing anything about it. So when I bring the bill back regarding the situations of these ladies in my office, I'm gonna see if you all want to save lives then and put some legislation in place that deals with the mental illness. You know, one time crime just used to come to certain areas. Now we don't know where it's coming. On the highways, all kinds of stores, establishments. So we keep on making these bad decisions down here and see what happens. And then my one final one I'm gonna remind us of is concealed weapon, open carry. You know, somebody stated earlier that unintended consequences, and I used to use that language, unintended consequences. But I'm beginning to wonder, is it really unintended consequences? Or is it that we really want to put laws in place that's going to damage certain populations of the state of South Carolina? There was an incident where a young man shot another young man in the back several times. And when the police came to arrest him, he put his gun on the counter and his concealed weapons permit. This gentleman, and I'm hearing that it's not just in that area, but other areas in the state, they honestly believe that a CWP means that you are okay killing people. That young man gonna spend the rest of his life probably in jail. And based on some of you all's vote, he may end up getting shot. But then that might be what y'all want. I wonder. Well, y'all got to answer to God, not me. But I pray for all of you, and I hope that you all have a good day. And I just wanted to come here so that the people know that if what we're doing down here with this abortion law is not what they want, you got an opportunity to make change and make a difference. November 4th, 2 weeks earlier, go vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Ms. McDaniel. Representative King is next.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, colleagues who are still present with us, and I appreciate you staying and listening to the voices of the minority. I sat there and wasn't really going to say anything, but I was compelled to come here to make a few remarks. I don't plan on standing up here long because, as we know, the bill was voted on yesterday, and we're here for the third reading today. But however, I would be remiss if I did not represent the voices that are silenced in this state and in this process. So when we come back in January, I just want you all to think about a few things that I thought about as we debated this issue, at least since I've been in the General Assembly, being elected in November of 2008 till this day. We have been debating abortions in this state. And before I go into some things I want you all to think about for the ones of us who will be blessed to sit in this chamber come January, I wonder how you all can go home and think that people do not watch what we do here and how we vote and how we prioritize things. Saving lives to me, and for my understanding, is in every aspect of our living. So when I reflect back on the last 2 years when we had a pandemic that we're still living in this state, I think that we did not have the same vigor to come into session to save lives. Talk to your local funeral directors. Read your local newspapers and watch and read and speak with those people and see how many lives were lost in this state because of our failure as a General Assembly to safeguard the citizens of South Carolina. So I believe that every life matters, even when we're in a pandemic and people don't want to take a vaccine or wear a mask. And you don't want to mandate that, but you want to mandate what women do with their bodies. And for women who sit in this chamber, who sit in the minority in this chamber, because there's very few of you, I apologize to you, even if you voted for it. I apologize to you for my colleagues who are male, who decided to determine what you can do with your body. So when we come back in January, we have a lot of work to do if we're going to truly be pro-life. So I have questions for you that I want you to ponder and come up with a plan, because as you are the majority and we are the minority, I can assure you that we are pro-life as well. But I can assure you that if you come up with a plan, we will be there to support you. And these are some items that I want you to think about. That if you're truly pro-life, you will step up and do something about it. So will we fix our public schools? Think about how we do that without taking funds and giving them to private institutions. Will we say that minimally adequate education systems isn't working and we need to change it? Will we expand the Supplemental Nutrients Assistance Program, SNAP, or what some may call food stamps, so that no family goes hungry? Will we finally give our foster care system and the Department of Social Services the resources they need to protect our most vulnerable children and population? Will we finally expand Medicaid so that all people have health insurance? We have counties without hospitals. Have you thought about that? We have counties without doctors. We are one of the worst states for women dying because of lack of health care. Will we take action on any of these problems? By passing this bill, we are forcing women to give birth. And then we are doing nothing, absolutely nothing, to support women and those children. So I just ask you, and I ask the voters who sent you here, I would not question the people who have elected you, but I would ask them to question you about what you're now going to do for the most vulnerable people in this state. I don't see how you all can sit in here and feel good about what we do as a General Assembly when we have people in poverty in this state. I don't see how you can go home into your district, because I'm going to tell you, I have people in my district that live in nice homes, and I have people in my district who live in school buses. I have children who do not even have running water. And we got to feel good about this. We have communities of populations of people who suffer with mental illness in this state and cannot access services. I want to applaud and thank the new speaker. When I sat down with him, one of the things he and I spoke about was mental illness in this state. And we both left that meeting saying we're going to do something to help South Carolinians who suffer with mental illness. I challenge you as my colleagues, because not only do people who are not zero people who are beyond 18 or 21. We have kids who are 1, 2, 3, 4 years old who suffer, as well as kindergartners, elementary school. We have to help our population who suffers with mental health. There's nothing being done in this state to ensure that when kids, and thank you, Mrs. Brawley, for your help with making sure that children in this state can go to school and don't worry about being shamed if they're unable to afford lunch. While you see Democrats put up these bills, I would employ and ask my Republican colleagues to do the same. If you genuinely care about the lives of these children who will be born, I have no issue with it. But if we're not going to do something as a state to protect these kids, then let's don't create laws like this. I'm going to end by saying this. Mr. Speaker and colleagues, I hope that when we look at the rule changes for the upcoming legislative session, there's a couple things that I ask you to look at. That if you're going to create controversial pieces of legislation, first of all, have the stamina to stay in the chamber. Secondly, have the respect for your colleagues who are debating to not walk out on them. Thirdly, cloturing the minority is shameful. I've never heard of a group of people who would create a narrative that there's an issue and expect others to sit down quietly. But then when you get up to speak, the first thing we're threatened with is cloture. If you cannot allow the voices of the minority to be heard, stay at home or give the seat to somebody else. I don't want to come here and debate abortion, but I'm here because I have an obligation to the people who have elected me. And I just ask for the same respect, that if you create bills that you know are going to create conversations in this chamber, allow your colleagues to talk. If you cannot accept the obligation as a representative to sit in these chambers and respect your colleagues, go home. It is shameful in South Carolina that the General Assembly will silence the minority, leave the chamber, and not hear what we have to say. I ain't talking to those folk outside the doors right now. I'm talking to my colleagues who claim to be open-minded enough to listen to the minority, but yet you walk out of the chamber or you cloture us. As you look at the rules, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, think about changing that rule. If that's the protection you have when you have 70-some members and you're afraid of the little 30 or 40 of us in here that may get up to speak, shame on you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Rivers is next. You're recognized, Mr. Rivers.
So I'm going to hit it and quit it. This is not going to be very long. After the victory lap, after the victory lap. So now you've won. And I want to say, Sly Stone had a song, I want to thank you for making me be myself again. Well, thank you now that you've caught the bus with the dog. What you going to do? What you going to do? Now you have an obligation to expend more resources. What you going to do? You have to do it. But I want to say this from a preacher perspective. My oldest child, Monica, I can remember the Sunday night very vividly. I preached that Sunday, and let me set it up. She's at Albany State studying forensic science. And she calls her father on Sunday night to tell her father that she's pregnant and she don't know how it happened. I'm like, wow. But she didn't call to speak to a preacher. She called to speak to her father. My advice to her was, baby, whatever you do, Daddy is going to support you. She had the children, twin boys, Jeremy and Jeremiah. Everybody's happy. So I'm pro-life, but my thing is, women should, and I believe that they should have a right to choose when it comes to their own body. And I'm going to join something right there. It's going to probably sound inflammatory to some, and some it may make you angry, but you know, oh well. I'm a history buff, and I love scripture. What we did and what we are doing with this piece of legislation is analogous to what happened to women back in slavery. The last time when women were not allowed to have the ability to say whether they want to have a child or not to have a child, prior to Roe Wade, was back in slavery. You impregnated the slaves. They didn't have no choice about having a baby or not. And what I find ironic is in this quest to move backwards, incrementally, you're doing things and you don't even see that you're regressing, and you're bringing back a time when it was not that great for us as a country, yet we say that we want to be the leaders of the world and set the standards for everybody in a global economic society. On one hand, we're telling women what they can and can't do. On the opposite hand, we're telling children what they can and can't learn. But yet we are trying to strive to be the best country that we can be, but it seems like we're trying to be the best country that we used to be. I look at this legislation in Section 3, it says, Article 1 of the Constitution of the State of South Carolina in 1895 guarantees that no person may be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law or be denied the equal protection of laws. And then we stuck on there, and a preborn child is deserving of that protection. That in itself is not true. Because we all know that in 1895, everyone did not have the ability to say they would have the liberty and property and due process of law. Due process of law wasn't for everybody in 1895. That's not because I'm somebody sinister or I'm definitely not a racist, because there's no such thing as a racist, because only people that can be racist are those who are in power. So 1895, we all, yeah. But then in 1896, Plessy, Ferguson, shows you that for some people, this liberty, freedom, however y'all say it, I can't even, life and liberty and happiness for all? For who? But let me get to the crux of this from a spiritual standpoint. I remember last year when we was debating this, I missed my turn as many times as I leave here and go home to Beaufort. It was raining that Thursday night, and I was in class, and I'm talking on the phone to this gentleman, and he couldn't understand how, as a preacher, I could take the position that I had taken. I missed my turn. I usually get off on exit 33. I end up almost in Jasper County. I was going to say, let me back up at the spiritual part. Monica, my daughter, a constituent. I go to get some gas, and I'm talking to her, and she tells me about her niece, her sister's daughter. The boyfriend rapes the young girl. He goes to jail. He comes out of jail. He files a petition. He gets custody of that child. And this is the environment that we are working in spiritually. It bothers me that we throw around God's name and we use him like he's our pit bull and we sing him on people when we want to. The New Testament, and all of you who are listening, especially you Bible thumpers, and that can have a negative and a positive connotation depending on how you use the Bible. But I challenge anyone in here, or anyone that's listening, to find me, Brother Magnuson, if he's here, in the New Testament where there's any topic on abortion. I challenge any one of you. The New Testament is silent about abortion, and there's a reason why. There is, what's amazing to me is how we come in, we are married to grace, but we tip out and have adultery with the law. We keep trying to manipulate people by saying abortion is killing, but the last time I checked, there are 10 commandments. I think one of them says, either 6 or 9, I think I get them reversed. One says thou shalt not kill, but then there's also one that says thou shalt not lie. And then the book says if one sin is bad, or if you see a problem with one, all of them are bad. But the good thing about that is something happened on the cross. And that's what grace is all about. Grace is saying that in the course of my daily living, each one of us, and it's so prophetic and so profound that he says in Scripture that grace is renewed every morning. And there's a reason for that, right? So we come up here and that's why I hate the word politician. Anyone that calls me a politician, we're going to have a little quick discussion because I'm an elected official. And that reminds me and keeps me grounded that at any time, based on the people, I'm elected and I'm to represent them and not my personal view. Now, I know people are going to come up and they're going to say, oh, God said this and God said that. But if you're going to be an aficionado of the Bible, let's don't play games with it. Again, there's no reference of abortion in the New Testament. Oh, let's take it a step further. For those of you who are also looking for the second coming is because of the New Testament. You can't be looking for somebody to come and, and then you're going to say half of the stuff that he didn't say. People, and the scary part, I look at this stuff and I say, wow, connect the dots. You have this attack on education. You have this attack on science. You have this attack on voting. And when you start connecting the dots and you see that the demographics are shifting and it makes you wonder if some people are nervous, and that's what's their reason for trying to maintain, control power and manipulate power so they can always be in power. All I say to you is, let me use scripture again. Romans 10:1-2 says, there are many who have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. And I know you back in the cooking room. You might be back there, but you ain't deaf, you can hear. And the book says, "You shall know the truth." And what bothers me in this season when young people are trying to determine, should they follow Christianity? Should they follow this kind of lifestyle? And we have people who are prostituting it for their own personal gain. Does God like that? He said that He will not give his glory to another. So all I'm saying to you, when you come up here and start talking about God said this and you're killing somebody and this and that, there are 10 commandments, and especially y'all who follow the big lie. Y'all still can't believe that 2020 happened. So you can't have it both ways. He knows the end from the beginning. And what I love about the victory lap, old Joseph, and what you sometimes do to the least of these, and even when you get in a position to have retribution and retaliate, Joseph said, you know what? You know the story. His brothers were tripping because now Jacob was dead, and they freaking out because they think that Joseph's going to handle them because he has power. But he said, you know what? What y'all meant for evil, God meant for good. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rivers. Representative McCravy's next.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have returned to this overtime session because the Dobbs case returned the issue of abortion to our state. Unconstrained by Roe, we are taking a big step toward defining what our state's position on life will be. While protecting and preserving all legitimate health care, this bill bans the practice of using abortion as birth control in our state. This bill, Mr. Bamberg, is unlike any other bill in the nation. It reflects the input of the medical community and gives bright line guidance as they requested. Contraception and emergency contraception is not affected by this bill. In vitro fertilization and assisted reproductive therapy is preserved by this bill. In the process, we did identify some ancillary areas that need work. One of those is streamlining the adoption process. Another is funding services for pregnant women that need those services. We pledge to work on those issues. The fact is that the right to life is the most fundamental, God-given, inalienable right of all. This bill is a voice for the least of these lives, but nonetheless precious lives. This bill and this body makes a strong statement that South Carolina stands for life. Thank you.
Garvin, Representative Garvin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I didn't plan to come to the well today. I really wanted to allow some of my other colleagues to come up and speak about the importance of this issue. But And I think all of my colleagues did a phenomenal job in articulating some of our concerns with this legislation that we passed yesterday. But from a historical standpoint, I think that aspect of the conversation hasn't been touched on today. Prior to Roe v. Wade becoming the law of the land, women around this country oftentimes had to resort to unsafe methods in order to end a pregnancy. Absolutely. So with that being said, my concern is that as we continue to move forward with this sort of bill, we're not moving our nation, we're not moving our state forward. We're really moving it backwards. I think what we also have, and some of my colleagues have hit on this point already, is that those who have access will continue to travel out of state in order to receive abortions. Those who have access to wealth, those who have access to privilege. But what about those who do live in rural South Carolina where the OBGYN is 30 to 45 minutes to an hour away? What about those people who don't have access? So I really want us to be reflective about what we've done. Yes, we can thump our chest and say we added exceptions to the bill. We can go back and tell our constituents that we did this. We made the bill better, or we made it more palatable. But what we've really done, quite frankly, to be honest with you, is while that may sound good, we're still moving our state backwards. Thank you.
Members, we're about to call the vote.
All right, the pending question before the body is adoption of House Bill 5399. Roll call is required and ordered. Voting on the board. Time has expired, polls are closed, and the clerk will tabulate. By a vote of 67 to 35, House Bill 5399 is given third reading. Mr. Forrest moves to recur the morning hour. Any objection? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, ayes have it. We're in the morning hour. Clerk will read.
House resolution by Representative Robert Williams to congratulate Cornerstone Baptist Church.
Want the roll of the House? Mr. Williams, Representative Williams requests the roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
House resolution by Representative Robert Williams congratulating John Wesley United Methodist Church.
Mr. Williams requests roll of add the roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
House resolution by Representative Alexander expressing profound sorrow for the passing of Oliver Bug Blue Perry Jr.
Representative Alexander requests a roll of the House. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if I can get your attention real quick, we're about to wrap up and about to adjourn. Let me just tell the body, let me get your attention. Mr. Howard. Guys, let me tell you first, we started off this debate by talking about civility and respect and decorum, and I want to congratulate each and every one of you. We have conducted ourselves as ladies and gentlemen throughout this whole process. This has been a contentious issue. I know it has been, and people are passionate about this issue, but you all have shown the best of this House, respected this institution, and I appreciate, you do not know how much I appreciate the way you conducted yourself, and I want to thank you for that and appreciate y'all being a part of this process and the way you handle it, and wish you a lot of luck. I must warn you right now that we are not finished, hopefully, maybe. We'll find out. So just to give y'all an idea of what happens, the bill obviously goes to the Senate next week. If it passes, then we will have to come back into session. And I anticipate that probably being the following week on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. As soon as I know, I will let y'all know. We will determine that. If people have conflicts or scheduling, please let me know immediately so we can try to work around that. And so on a lighter note, it is my honor today to wind this up with a presentation to one of our most articulate and entertaining people. The new human bomb threat, Justin Bamberg, is here. And Mr. Taylor has a special recognition for Mr. Bamberg. Mr. Bamberg, if you'll come on up here for us, please, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right there, sir, please.
Okay.
Just stand there. This is a little bit of this is your life. So I think we all recognize, and thank you, Speaker, for those words about our debate. I think we all recognize, too, that we are much unlike Congress in Washington. They really are at odds with each other. And here, we commingle, we talk to each other, we actually listen to each other. Republicans and Democrats are actually friends. I have my Democrat friend right here, one of many. But seriously, you know, we come to this well, all of us have done this, and if you're of my age, you bring your grandkids up here, right? And you show off your grandkids because you're proud of them. And if you're a bit younger, you bring your kids in here. And if you've been here a long time, you bring them in when they're little, and you bring them in when they're big, right? Well, our friend Justin here, he's not married. So he does have another love of his life. Now, mind you, he represents, we heard it this morning, poor Bamberg County. Poor Bamberg County. Oh, my word, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, it doesn't have anything, right? But it does have one flashy car. Woo! I tell you. It does. Now, so he can't. Now, here's the deal. I can bring my grandkids up here. You can bring your kids and grandkids up here, right? but he can't bring his new car up here. Hold on. Oh, boy. Here we go. Now, wait a minute. So we know that since, help me out here, buddy. Pull that off there. There you go. So, so now look here now. Now this is the car. This is the car that he had. Now I'm gonna tell you, the hood opens, the doors open, this car. And wait a minute. There's more. So it reads, let me read this to you. Okay. To Representative Justin Bamberg, the people's rep. In recognition of the 8th wonder of the world being driven by the 9th. Right here. May he say something?
Well, Mr. Bamberg, I just want to congratulate you on fulfilling your motto with this card: big, better, Bamberg. All right. You got anything? All right. Hearing no any other further business of the House. Hearing none, Representative Moss moves that we adjourn pursuant to the sine die resolution. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a great week.